Today is Friday, October 11th. It is 9 a.m. and this is the Governing Board workshop. I'm going to call the meeting to order. If you're able to stand, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. We do have a quorum. We have 8 members here, and we have one online who is Director Novello. I will read the meeting procedures statement that we read at each meeting. The Governing Board conducts all of its meetings in compliance with Arizona open meeting laws per Arizona Revised Statutes, Section 33-1804, and in concert with RCSCW bylaws, policies, and standing rules. Parliamentary procedures, as outlined in the most recent edition of Robert's Rules of Order, will also be followed in board meetings as appropriate, consistent with Bylaw 3.07 entitled Procedures for Owner-Member Meetings and Standing Rules 2 and 3. All questions and comments are to be directed to the Governing Board President. All comments, all comments are entertained at the discretion of the Governing Board President. Speakers shall state their name and member number and speak in a courteous manner. The Governing Board President may limit commentary time and the number of commentators or speakers on any issue. The Governing Board President also may redirect commentary at individual agenda items to the general guest comments agenda line item, except when the board has discussed the agenda item and a formal vote is to be taken. All fire and room safety precautions and regulations are strictly obeyed at all meetings per the guidance of the Arizona Fire and Medical Authority. The Governing Board reserves the right to adjourn any meeting if the safety of the board, meeting attendees, or others is deemed at risk, or if there is too much disruption to continue. After one verbal warning by the President, the board also reserves the right to ask any meeting attendees to leave any meeting should their behavior be deemed dangerous or unacceptable. Disciplinary action may follow. Okay, with that, then we'll move to our first agenda item, which is approval of the minutes from our September 13th, 2024 workshop. Are there any changes, additions, corrections to those meeting minutes? Seeing none, they will be accepted as written. Going on to new business in Section 3.01 is a facts and findings for the Cintas Staff Uniforms 5-year contract discussion. Our CFO, Mr. Swan, will present that.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Thank you, Director Leary, or President Leary. Basically, our uniform contract with Cintas is expiring, and we need to sign another agreement. And this is not a year-to-year contract because it's a pretty big investment on whatever vendor we use for uniforms and setup and all the things that go along with getting set up with a new uniform contract. So went to bid. Cintas came back significantly less than everybody else. It's about a $15,000 contract, which of course we don't need to get permission for, but it is a contract that is over a year, and that's why we're here to present to the Governing Board today to request. We actually are requesting a 5-year contract because we can keep the price down at an annual cap of 3% per year versus 5% per year if we extend the contract into a 5-year versus a 3-year contract. And so that's what we're here asking for today.
Okay, are there any questions from the board?
And this is in the budget, of course.
Okay, no questions? Any questions from the audience? Okay, do I have consensus then to move this to the, do I have?
I do have.
Okay.
I think this is very good. I think it's very prudent that you were able to, through your negotiations and discussions with Cintas, to be able to get a 5-year contract and be able to retain the inflation factor to 3%. So, I mean, it's a small thing, but it's a really big issue.
Well, it's a credit to Todd and actually Diana, his staff person, was very integral in procuring that. So, yeah, it was a good discussion we had with them, and of course, we tried to make the most of it.
Okay, thank you. Any other board comments or questions? One more time for the audience. Okay, then with that, do we have consensus to move this to our regular meeting to vote on? Okay, we have unanimous consensus to do that. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Swan. Okay, number 3.02, Chairperson for the Charter Clubs Committee, John Chatton, will give us an update on the RR&Ps working group.
Yes, good morning. One of the Chartered Club Committee's annual duties is to review the RR&Ps. And at our last meeting, we designated a work group to do that. So Nick Turner and Vicki Erla are heading up that group. And I don't have much to report because their first meeting is this afternoon at 1 o'clock. So we will get a further update at our November 5th Chartered Clubs Committee meeting.
Okay. Thank you, Director Chatton. Any questions or comments from the board? Seeing none, any questions or comments from the audience? Any online questions? No. Okay. Thank you for that update then. We will move to 3.03, where Chairperson Director Williams will give us an update on the Property Committee Policy Review.
Yes, we have completed the review of the policies for all the facilities, which is an annual assignment, one of our major duties. We have reviewed all of the policies and recommend no changes at this time. We think they take good care of our community just the way they're written. So we are completed with that task for this year. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Any questions from the board for Director Williams? Any questions from the audience? Any questions online? No. Okay. Thank you. And with no action that we need to take, I will move on to the next agenda item, which is 3.04, updates on the properties and golf tours. Director Williams, do you want to start us off?
Sure. Properties Committee has completed the review of 2 of our recreation centers. The next one is Tuesday morning at Kuntz at 6:45 a.m., and I'll look forward to seeing all of you there. That's it.
Thank you, Director Williams. Any questions from the board for Director Williams? Okay, seeing none, I will move over to Director Grom to give us an update on the golf course tours.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yes, the Golf Committee established their dates to tour our 7 golf courses. This was discussed at the Golf Committee meeting yesterday, and it was an attachment to the meeting agenda. But we already did our first tour this past Tuesday, and that included Pebblebrook and Stardust. And we'll be touring on Wednesday, October 16th at Deer Valley and Desert Trails. That tour will begin at 2 p.m., and anyone's welcome. And in addition to that, the committee will be scheduling a tour of the golf lab in the future, probably sometime in November. So I've given a list to the president, and it is online for those interested. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Grom. Any questions for Director Grom from the board? Questions from the audience? Okay. Questions online?
Nothing.
Okay, we're just breezing right through this. I'm going to skip 3.05. I want to jump to 3.06. Director Novello, if you can give us an update on the YouTube edits and retention policy progress.
Certainly. Good morning, everyone. The governing board decided last month that we needed a potential policy to retain our YouTube meeting minutes and also, and we'll include in there a policy around preserving an unedited version as well. So my understanding or my game plan is to include those key points of what we'd like to do in terms of retaining the policy duration, how we want to preserve edited or unedited versions, and access to both. So really just not talking about how this will be done, but what it is we feel is important. My game plan for including those key points would be to have a draft available, as I agreed with the board. I'll have a draft available for Jack's review by the 15th. And after he's had a chance to talk with me about his input, we'll determine the timing, but we'll get that around to the rest of the board for input before we pass it along for further discussion. All goes well to the board, I would imagine that we'll be reviewing this at the November 8th workshop. So that's my game plan. Did I, for the board's input, those key points of retention as well as a policy around the original as well as any edited versions of those recordings, are those the key points that the board would like to see reflected?
So any questions for Director Novello? Any answer for her to her question?
I do have a question.
Director Rhodes?
Yeah, I'm a little confused when we talk about edited versions. Would you explain?
Us.
Pardon?
Certainly. In the rare occasion where we've had foul language or something that is deemed inappropriate, those comments have either been deleted or bleeped, if you will. So those sorts of discussions would occur, and if they, in the unlikely event it does occur, we have in the past informally been able to retain the original and present an edited version, Dick. So if we are going to do that for those occasions where there's been some kind of an inflammatory language, then we just need to have a small policy around what that would be, what we'd like to see.
Does that answer your question,
Did I
Director?
answer your question?
Yes, and I think that's something that's just going to have to be under discussion.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the purpose of this. Any other questions for Director Rhodes from the board? Any questions from the audience?
Or Director Novello?
Yes. Oh, what did I say? Oh, sorry, Director Novello, sorry.
You called me Director Rhodes.
Yeah,
That's
I'm
okay.
sorry.
I've been called worse, right?
I was doing so well up until that point.
You're still doing well.
Any questions for Director Novello from the audience? Any questions online? Okay. Thank you, Director Novello. And we will move on to the next agenda item. I switched the order because I think there may be some discussion on this one. I'm going to go back to 3.05 for Director Rhodes to talk about what's going on with the food policy discussion in the sports pavilion.
Thank you. We had our second meeting of our committee on the 9th. And notwithstanding the fact that we've identified how our policies are going to be reviewed, who's going to review them, and a schedule for review, which will actually begin in November. But the primary points of discussion have a lot of, it's one issue that is probably multiple issues, and that's the issue of food in the bowling alley and in Lizard Lounge. Because right now the policy is none is that we don't permit food in there. It really has several points to this, one of which is the compliance of our food vendor in there to comply with the provisions of the contract, which are in question now, and we are looking at that. And the other issue is there and I'm going to say policy, but it's really more of an operational directive because it's not a governing board issue. It's an operational directive of how we're going to permit food in the, if we're going to permit food, or under what conditions will we permit food in the bowling alley that was not purchased in the bowling alley. We're taking this from two different points, one of which is a critical review of the contract and the contractual obligations that are outlined in that. And then the second one is to have another group that will look at what is our operational directive of food in the bowling alley. Each one of you, I'm sure, have questions. Well, what if it's my birthday and I'd like to bring cookies in, and there's just many opportunities for that. And right now it's relatively draconian. It's no, but we're looking at that. I can't give you an answer of when. I can tell you that the right people have this. They are paying attention to this right now, and we are actually working on this as we speak. So in the near future, in the very near future, put your own time frame to that because I won't give you one. We're going to look at the contract and a new operational directive for the use of food or having food in the bowling alley and in Lizard Lounge.
Thank you, Director Rhodes. Any questions for Director Rhodes from the board? Yes, Director Chatton.
I was just curious what the policy is at the golf courses, as they sell food, and we don't, in general, allow other food to come in to be eaten at the golf course. I can see at some of the other rec centers or the meeting rooms where they've had potlucks or that type of thing. It's not a competition there. But at the bowling alley or golf course, or wherever else they may sell food, seems like that might make a difference.
There's a lot of moving parts to this, and we do have the consideration of the contract that we have with the food vendor that's in there. So there are differences there. Those are some of the issues that we're looking at now, of having some sense of precedence, and what's the right thing to do is what we're looking for. What's the right thing to do? And again, we want to keep in mind that this is for our homeowners, and we want to make this as positive as we can, and still stay within the contractual limitations and even the sanitation requirements, if there are any that are present, which I suspect there are, that are probably might be county or even state. So thank you for that. Because we've been painfully aware of that. Thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, Director Horvath.
Yes, so the vendor that's in there has a problem with this, or?
So I'm not going to put words,
Okay.
I'm not going to, because I really don't know. I do know that we have stipulated hours of operation, stipulation of how the food's going to be delivered, and there's a question, if we're trying to answer the question now, is he in compliance with all of that? The reports that we get back are scattered, yes, no, and then we have to sort out that, well, I didn't like the food and whatever, there's, but there are contractual stipulations that we're looking at now as well.
Okay, so there is stipulations.
There are,
Okay.
and part of the, and I think this was probably, and I'm going to say this is purely conjecture right now, but my sense is that when we brought the food vendor in, we want him to be successful.
Right.
So to do that, we said, okay, You say you're going to do this, here's your hours of operation, that's fine. We will shut down and enforce the no food policy, except if it's purchased from you. That may or may not be working.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from the board? Any questions from the audience? Any questions online? None. Okay. Then with that, thank you, Director Rhodes. We will move on to 3.07, which is revised standing rule number 1 entitled Procedures for Member Participation at Meetings, redlined, Director Piaskowski.
Thank you, Jack. So the standing rule, number 1, is how our residents participate in a meeting. That has not been revised for quite some time, considering if you read what's up there and what we do. So we went through it, and some of it we cleaned up because it just said board, and we changed it to governing board. The procedures for coming to the floor, in the past, it was just to raise your hand, and then we would call on you, but that's not what we do anymore. You actually come to the audience lectern and write your name and recite your name and your rec card number. So this is just basically an update of what we actually do to all of our meetings. I don't want to read it. Do I have to read it? You guys could.
No, well, any questions from the board? Have you all read it? Yes, Director Rhodes.
I'm concerned, and I'm looking at, are we going to talk about this now, this particular?
Yes.
Okay, 3A, small I, all in-person and online members have the opportunity to speak at once, speak once. It was my understanding that the chairman has the option to designate the number of speakers and the time of duration, which would mean that that isn't necessarily true.
That is true, but it's at least the first ground rule. I mean, that we have, if the chairperson could say, ask who has everybody had a chance to speak, and then offer more time if wanted.
No, that's not my point. My point is that we've had opportunity in here where we've had some very controversial issues. And the rules were beforehand that, and I'll just give the example of softball. That's the one that comes to mind. And that was like 2 years ago, maybe, that there were X number of people that could speak on one side and X number on the other. So if this room were filled and everybody in the room wanted to talk, they're not going to get the opportunity because that's not the rules that were set.
Okay, that's a great point. Any other comments on that? That's a great point.
I'm not arguing. I'm not arguing with this, Jack. I'm not arguing with this. I just would like to have some level of clarity that the chairman has the prerogative to establish rules beforehand of the number of people that can speak and the duration of time.
And Director Piaskowski?
So when we did that softball thing, did the committee not say to softball and that you have so many people that can speak? So the committee actually allowed that, or the chairman actually so the chairman actually contacted
In the previous meeting, the president directed each side that they could have 3 representatives, and they would have an allotted time period to raise their points. And those are the only ones that were going to be taken. And that was for the next meeting.
And we did that for pickleball as well. We
Yeah.
had a session for pickleball as well. That
So,
I'm not arguing with this premise because I believe this. But there's another stipulation that, and it's really, I would say, in extenuating circumstances. They're usually very emotionally charged, and the speakers are going to say the same thing over and over and over again. And this kind of, when you do what was done for softball and what was done for pickleball, you're really cutting to the chase, and that's the intent of that.
So how would you suggest that this be changed?
I don't know if we could, words to the effect, and I'm not going to wordsmith it now. I would say words to the effect is the intent is to have everyone be able to speak. However, we do have the right that the president has the prerogative to establish boundaries on numbers of speakers and duration of time under extenuating circumstances.
Okay, any other comments, suggestions? Yes, Director Hurley.
Yes, I would just suggest that we change this language to be more in sync with the procedure that you read before every meeting. I mean, that would be.
Okay, that's a good idea as well. Any other ideas? Okay, Director Piaskowski?
President
Yes,
Leary, it's
yes.
Christine here.
Director Novello.
I agree with Tim's point here, excuse me, Director Hurley's point here, and just suggest for consideration that we don't need to go into the full detail of the procedure that we read before every meeting of the committees as well as, but to just synchronize them. So I would hate to see this policy become overly prescriptive, but just to align would be a great suggestion if Director Piaskowski and team are in agreement. That's all.
Okay, thank you. So, Director Piaskowski, what I think the board is asking is that the 3AI shall be somehow synchronized, not a complete quote, but synchronized and aligned with the governing board procedures, meeting statements that we do. And in fairness, the statements came after this was written, so I think it's a good idea to synchronize them. Okay, any other comments? So 3AI is the only one that was, so with that, then Director Piaskowski, if you can take that back and wordsmith it, we'll go through it again and before we make a change to that standing rule. Okay? Yeah, timetable, so if he can, next workshop, for our November workshop. Okay, that concludes all of our new business. I'll go to agenda item 4, board director comments. I'll start with Director Hurley. Any comments?
No comments, thank you.
Director Rhodes.
No comments, thank you.
Director Williams.
No more comments, thank you.
Director Piaskowski.
No comments.
Director Chatton.
Nothing to add.
Director Grom.
No comments.
Director Horvath.
No comments.
Director Novello.
No further comment, thank you.
Okay, with that, then I'll go to guest comments 4.02. Please approach the audience lectern. Sign in with your name and your rec card number, and your comment or question is to be directed to the governing board president.
Good morning. My name is Sharon Haddock, 106-159. I don't know that it's whether the board is aware of the fact that over 55 trees were cut down, old growth trees on Grandview Golf Course. Over 55. There's been no mention of any of that in any of the planning. There was never any mention of the fact that we'd have to cut down 40-foot trees all over the golf course because of the water system. So before we start on Echo Mesa, I would certainly like someone to come and talk to the board at least about how you plan to not cut down 55 more trees.
Thank you. We'll take that under consideration.
Grace Pamela Party, 402-841. I'm here to advocate to see if we can get a craft show that is indoors, not tents, for so many of our crafters, members of our clubs. And it would be a case of the rec center providing the tables, charging a fee for the table. So that way, if somebody wants 3 tables, they're going to pay 3 times as opposed to 1. And see if it would be feasible. There's possibility to charge a $1 fee to get in the door in order to see how many people that you attract, because it would be a new venue, but it also would be a venue for crafters that are in this home association. I am willing to work with a committee to help make this happen.
Thank you. I will hand this one off to our general manager for him to get in touch with you or designate someone to get in touch with you to follow up on this. Any other comments from the audience? Any online comments? Okay, and with that, I will adjourn the meeting at 9:31. Thank you for attending.